Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a S3 event trigger to a SQS queue as a destination. And we're going to make it such that anytime anyone creates, modifies, or updates a file in our S3 bucket, it'll trigger that notification event. Also explain to you some of the different options that you have for event triggers. SQS is one of them. There's also SNS and Lambda functions that you can use as well. So I'm just going to start with a clean slate here without a S3 bucket and without a queue. I'm just going to walk you through how to create them really quick, but feel free to skip this if you already know how to do this. I'm going to be using all of the default settings. So I'm just going to open up two tabs here. I'm going to open up one for S3. I'm also going to open up one for SQS or Simple Queue Service. So I'm going to go into S3. We're just going to create a demo bucket. I'm going to go to create bucket here. We can call this whatever we want. Let's say this is be a better dev dash S3 demo bucket. Actually, are you allowed dashes? You may not be allowed that. Actually, I can't remember. But anyways, we'll leave it like that. We're also just going to put everything to default here, scrolling down, not going to touch anything. We're going to go ahead and click on create bucket. So now we can filter this, be a better dev. It's this one here, S3 demo bucket. And now we're just inside of it. We can modify some of these things later, which we will do in a moment. Okay, let's go ahead and create our SQS queue. And we're going to go here and we're in the queue section now. We're going to go ahead and click on create queue. And let's just name this SQS queue plus S3 demo. And again, we're going to leave everything as default, not touch anything here. We're going to actually have to come back to this access policy later and modify this. This is actually where people get tripped up the most because you need to modify this access policy to give permission to your S3 bucket or to the S3 service rather to send messages to your queue. And I'll show you how that works in a couple minutes here. So let's leave that as default for now. We're going to scroll down, go to create queue, and now we have this queue, right? The SQS queue plus S3 demo. Okay, so let's go back into our S3 tab, and we're going to go down to the properties section. And inside the properties section, we're going to scroll down. There should be a section here on events. Here it is. So event notifications. And you can see that I don't have any event notifications that are configured. So we need to create an event notification in order to set this up. So we're going to go ahead and click on this. And this is going to launch the wizard for us. And so let's just name this any update, I guess you can say, or any... Yeah, any update is fine. And an additional thing you can do here with some of this prefix and suffix settings is that you can make it such that if you have a subfolder structure inside of your bucket and you only want to trigger any updates or events based on files that get touched that are within this folder, for example, you can set it up that way. So with this setup with images / if you had a subfolder in your bucket with images, only when objects get updated within that subdirectory will you trigger the event notification. Of course, this depends on what type of event that you select later, which we'll get to in a moment. But this is an optional field, so I'm just going to leave this as default. By default, it's any or every object that exists inside the bucket. And you can also do it for specific file types as well. So if you only want to trigger notifications or events on specific file types, like a CSV or a JSON or whatever it may be, you would just type dot, then whatever the suffix of the file is. Okay, so let's scroll down here, and they actually changed the UI recently, made it a little bit more intuitive and easy to use, and just bucketized, no pun intended, each of the settings here. So we have object creation events, we have object removal, object restore, object ACL, tagging. There's a lot that you can get notifications for here. So what we want is actually these items here. So put, post, copy, and multi-part upload. And so put is for when you initially create the object, post is for when you replace or update the object, copy is when you copy it, and multi-part upload complete is when you complete the multi-part upload process. And so if you only want one or two of these, then you can do that. I'm going to select all for this, and that's automatically going to trigger all of these. So you don't need to you can see how the behavior is. If you put just a couple of these and you select this, it's just going to disable that because you're going to get everything as per the asterisk wildcard. Okay, so we want all objects created or touched or modified or copied or multi-parted. So we can go ahead now and scroll down all the way to the bottom. And here is when we can choose which destination that we want to send the notification to. And so you have three different options. You have Lambda functions, you have SNS topics, or you have an SQS queue. Now we're going to choose SQS queue in this case. And I promise you that I talk about why you would want to choose one of these options over the other. So SQS queue is great if you just want to get a single copy of the message, like whenever you create or modify a file, delivered to just a source destination. And if you're using a queue, like you can process that event either immediately or later. You can have it sit there and come and check it out, pull your queue, see what's in there. Then, this is a good use case to use a queue. It's also great for back pressure. So if you have something that is trying to process messages in the queue, you're not going to receive throttling because it uses a pull mechanism. Whoever is the consumer pulls messages from the queue to process them. This is in contrast to a Lambda function where, we'll get to that in a moment, but it's a push-based model. So a queue is just a really great default option if you only have one consumer. Now, if you have multiple consumers, say you have many different teams or services or components that want to get notified whenever an event occurs in this topic related to put events or whatever we set, like object created or whatever, then you would use an SNS topic. SNS stands for Simple Notification Service, and this is great for fan out. So it'll send an identical copy of this message to all of the subscribers of your SNS topic. So great for fanning out to multiple different consumers. Lambda function is another single consumer similar to SQS queue, except that it works on a different invocation model. I believe it's synchronously. Actually, you may want to double check that. I can't remember now. I suppose I can check the documentation, but I'll leave that as an exercise for you. But essentially, if you just want to, say you have a function or a process that you want to get triggered whenever an object gets touched or created or modified or whatever the event type may be, then the Lambda function is going to be great for you. Keep in mind though, if you have a lot of concurrency, so like many different files that are being uploaded or modified or touched all at once, and you trigger a Lambda function, then that may result in throttling because there's only so much concurrency unless you modify the concurrent executions configuration of your Lambda function. And so we're going to select queue here, SQS queue, because that's what this video is all about. And you can either enter your queue ARN. If this is a cross account, so in a different AWS account, you would have to choose this option and then put in the Amazon resource name or ARN here. But because this queue is part of my accounts that I have right now, we just click on the first option and then we just find our queue. So here's the one, SQS queue plus S3 demo. That's a terrible name. Sorry about that. Now, before we click on Save Changes, I want to draw your attention to this warning box here. And this says that before Amazon S3 can publish messages to a destination, you must grant the S3 principal the necessary permissions to call the relevant API to publish messages to the topic, queue, or Lambda function. You can click on this link to learn more. What essentially this means is that in order for this to work, you need to give S3 the permission to call the send message API in SQS. And you need to give the S3 service or the S3 principal the ability to do that. So let me show you how to do that with an SQS queue. And the process is pretty much the same for SNS and Lambda function. You just got to change the names around a little bit. Okay, so let's go to Save Changes now. And okay, so you can see here, unable to do this, right? It's not letting you. And the reason is because we haven't done this yet. So we can't create the trigger unless we set up the principal correctly on the subscriber side. And so in order to do that, we're going to go back to our tab with the queue. And so this is the queue that we want as the destination, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the access policy tab. And this is the access policy for the queue, which basically describes who is allowed to interact with it, whether it be in this account or another account. And you can see the default statement is allowing basically anyone on my account to do every action, SQS:*, which is a wildcard for anything. And then the resource is this particular queue. And so what we need to do is we need to add a comma right after this statement, because you can see this is an array list. You can have multiple different statements. And so we need to add a comma and add a second entry that gives the S3 service as the principal the permission to call basically any API that it wants, but you can restrict this to send message if you wish. And so in order to do that, we need to go to edit here And now we're going to be able to modify that access policy. You could have done this in the beginning when you were creating the queue, but you can also do this after. And we're just going to put a comma right after the first entry. I'm just on a new line. And I'm just going to grab the thing here, the policy that you need to enter. And you can like copy this out of the video, but it's pretty straightforward. And all you really need to do is well, I guess we can fix the format too. This is going to bother me. You have an effect allow, and then you have the principal, which is a service. It's not a user or a thing, but it's the s3.amazonaws.com service. And then the action is SQS:*. So we're giving it the ability to call any API in SQS. And the resource is, so you can see it's the SQS service. We're in US East 1. Make sure that you change this to whatever region that you have your queue in. This is the account name, and this is the queue. You can see obviously this queue is wrong. This is something I was playing around with before. So we can just change this really quick. I'm going to copy it from above and just replace that. And now this should be good to go. You can also use the policy generator to create a copy of this thing if you really want, or you can just pause the video and like type this out. But anyways, if we scroll down here and we go to save now, if everything worked correctly, you didn't have like a syntax error, it should have saved successfully. Now, if we go back to our tab for the S3 notifications and we try to click on save again, you'll see that this will work. And there you go. So it was able to create the notification correctly now. And so now if we, I'm going to be ping-ponging back and forth between these tabs really quick just to show you some things. If we go to send and receive messages, you can see there's already a message available. And that's because it sends a test message initially when you set this up. So if you go to pull for messages and you click on it and we look inside of it, what do we got here? Okay, you can see it's S3 test event. That's inside of the event, right? So we can purge the queue, stop polling and clear content. No, I think you got to go back to purge, or yeah, you can delete the queue if you want, or delete the message manually if you want, but purging just removes everything from it. Now let's go and test this by just like uploading some files into our bucket. So I'm back on S3, and then I'm going to objects, and then I'm just going to kind of drag a file in here, just like some random file, cdk.json. Sure. Let's put that in here. And okay, we're going to upload this and click on upload. Okay, upload successful. Let's go back to our queue and see what's in there. Send and receive. You can see messages available is one again. Pull for messages. Click on this. And you can see this is actually a very different syntax. It doesn't have test message or anything inside of it, but it's got records and it's got a message within it. And then it gives you a bunch of stuff like event name and stuff. Should say so here's the name of the bucket that it came from. And within the object key is cdk.json. So that's the file name. And then depending on what you're doing with your queue, if you have like a Lambda function that pulls from it, you can read off this message, download the file, or process it. And so let's do the same thing now with an update or a modify of this event. And so what I'm going to do is go back to the bucket and let's just kind of replace this file with the same file, which should trigger a post event. So we should get another event to the queue, which is like kind of a replace event. So upload. And so that was successful. We're going to go back here. Let's go to pull for messages again. And we should, so now we see 2 messages. Here's the second one. The reason I know that is because receive count is 2. That's for the first one. It's a little bit older. You can also look at the timestamp too if you really want. This one is 1 minute older. And if we click on this, you can see, okay, so here's the event again, and then you see it's the same file name, cdk.json, and then here is the bucket name as well. So this is kind of how you set this up with SQS and S3 in order to create a trigger. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. And thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.